learners, my name is Courtney and I'm a naturalist here at Long Lake Conservation Center. Today I will be leading you on a virtual adventure, ecology exploration. We will be hiking through multiple ecosystems here at Long Lake Conservation Center, ending at a rare and unique ecosystem. Along the way, we will observe and study like ecologists. We will practice our observation skills, identify, classify, investigate, and learn about our surroundings. Come along with me as we tour ecosystems at Long Lake. Here we are entering the first ecosystem on our ecology exploration. Take a look around. What type of ecosystem would you say this is? My immediate classification would be forest because there are trees growing here. But an ecosystem isn't defined solely on what is growing. An ecosystem is a community of living things interacting with their environment. To say that another way, ecologists are looking at the living factors, or they'll say biotic, and the non-living factors, abiotic. Those things together are going to classify and define an ecosystem. So let's head into this forest and use our observation skills. What biotic or living factors are you noticing? What abiotic or non-living factors are you noticing? Let's go. Awesome observations, ecologists. We're looking at those living biotic and non-living abiotic factors in the ecosystem. We've been in a pine forest, or ecologists would say coniferous, cone and needle bearing trees. Now we're going to hike down the hill here and into a deciduous forest. Deciduous trees are trees that decide to lose their leaves. Let's keep up those same observation skills as we hike. What biotic factors are you noticing? What abiotic factors are you noticing? What is similar between the two forest ecosystems and what's different? So let's hike into the deciduous forest. Already, ecologists, you are probably noticing so many different things. Comparing the two types of forest ecosystems we've been hiking through. Now, the biotic factors are diverse and different between the two ecosystems, but the abiotic factors are a little bit easier to name. They are abundant and all around us, but there are less to classify and define. Abiotic factors in this ecosystem will be things like sunlight, the sun's energy, air, oxygen, nitrogen, the elements all around us. It'll also be rocks, soil, nutrients, and minerals. These abiotic factors that sustain all of the biotic life in the ecosystem. The abiotic factors are providing what the biotic factors need to survive: energy and nutrients. The biotic factors interact with the abiotic non-living factors. The biotic factors also interact with one another. Living things interact. Take a look at a few of the biotic factors we could see in this ecosystem and define how they interact. Are they a producer, a consumer, or a decomposer? this deciduous forest, the biotic factors are different than in the coniferous forest. We are surrounded by aspen, oak, and ironwood trees, and the abiotic factors are different too. Here on lower ground, the trees, when they have leaves, create more shade and less sunlight. Downhill, the soil below us has higher water content or moisture level and different nutrients in the soil. Let's investigate that quick. So, here in the deciduous forest, we have our trees growing all around us. Then the forest floor, there are different plants starting to grow this spring season. There's leaf litter from the deciduous trees shedding all their leaves last fall. And then underneath all of that is soil. What is soil and where does it come from? Oh, those are good questions. And we could probably spend a whole other adventure just answering those two questions alone. But for today, let's focus on this. Soil is a mixture of decomposed organic material, liquids and gases. Decomposers break down biotic factors, and they help create soil. Things like fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates break down living things and recycle the nutrients back into the ecosystem. The soil has everything the producers need to grow. It holds moisture. It is very rich in nutrients after the breakdown of all that material. Has bacteria and oxygen and other organisms the producers need to survive. The difference in abiotic factors like sunlight and moisture contribute to the different ecosystem. It allows us to go on a short hike through different ecosystems. Ecosystems change across the landscape based on the availability of those abiotic factors. Ecosystems also change over time. Ecosystems changing over time is called ecological succession. For example, this deciduous forest was not always a forest. 100 years ago, this was farmland. We can tell because we have some evidence left behind from the farmers. They piled this fieldstone pile so that they could plow the fields and grow crops. Now, when they left, ecological succession took place. The crops died and a pioneer species took place. This is the first species growing in the forest ecosystem. It is an aspen tree. The aspen trees grow tall and create a shaded environment for other hardwood trees to grow, like oaks. And over time, 100 years, the farmland succeeded into the deciduous forest we are seeing today. Ecologists identify abiotic and biotic factors. They look at interactions between those factors in an ecosystem and analyze change throughout the ecosystem, whether that's over time or across the landscape. We're going to keep hiking, and I want you to focus on that change. When does the ecosystem change around you? How can you tell? Let's hike. Did you notice a change? There are still trees all around us, but they're no longer deciduous. They are coniferous trees. So right away you might think forest again, but let's take a closer look at those abiotic factors. Recall in the forest floor was covered in leaf litter, had rocks, and under that, nice, dry, nutrient-rich soil. In this ecosystem, the ground level is covered in this moss plant, and it's wet everywhere. This is a raised bog ecosystem. Again, we are going to explore this new ecosystem. It is rare and unique. As we walk along this boardwalk, which keeps us safe and dry, notice those abiotic and biotic factors. So here we are exploring the bog. And as ecologists, you're looking at those biotic and abiotic factors, identifying the living things, what's unique about this ecosystem. Like many ecosystems, this ecosystem has changed over time. What is that called again? A change in an ecosystem over time? Succession. This ecosystem has succeeded. But unlike the farmland to deciduous forest, this story of succession took a very long time and started over 10,000 years ago. This story of succession started with a glacier, a massive sheet of moving ice. The glacier is a force of nature, moving about for thousands of years, carving the landscape, depositing rocks and soil, creating hills and valleys, leaving rivers and lakes. When the glaciers receded, they left many lakes. Some lakes drained, others stayed lakes, and lakes with the right components became bogs. This lake, yes, this was a lake, became a bog over time, or succeeded into a bog ecosystem. It succeeded because it has the right characteristics. It was a stagnant lake. No water flow in or out, still water. It was a shallow lake, on average only 10 feet deep, and it was a cold lake in a cold climate. So from an ancient glacial lake, succession took place over thousands of years to create this bog. Every season in the fall, the plants around the lake would shed their dead plant matter, leaves, and debris, and this would fall to the bottom of the lake. Now, lakes with movement and higher oxygen levels will have decomposition, breakdown of this plant material. But here in this glacial lake, with no moving water and very little oxygen, decomposition didn't happen. So that plant material gathered at the bottom of the lake. And year after year, for thousands of years, it accumulated. It didn't decompose. The water from the ancient glacial lake did not dry up or drain. It stayed there in between that plant material, filling it like a wet sponge. That partially decomposed plant matter we call peat. Peat is the base of the bog, partially decomposed plant matter and water. Once the peat accumulated above the water level, a pioneer plant was able to take hold. Like the aspen tree, it was the first to grow everywhere in this ecosystem. Sphagnum moss. If you look around, every part of the surface of the bog is covered in sphagnum moss. The sphagnum moss grows across the peat and creates a surface for other plants to grow and wildlife to use to travel. So over thousands of years, from glacier through succession, the buildup of the peat, and the pioneer plant taking hold, the raised bog formed. So here we are on the bog boardwalk. We are on our third ecosystem of ecology exploration. We've been in the coniferous forest, deciduous forest, and now on the raised bogs. With your ecologist skills, you're probably recognizing some similarities. Pine trees or coniferous trees. There are birds singing all around us. The sun is shining. There's water available on this ecosystem. But let's dig in and take a close look at what makes this ecosystem, the raised bog, truly unique. And it all has to do with the abiotic factors we find down here. So from our story of succession, we learned that this bog is like a sponge holding water. And the sponge material is that peat, partially decomposed plant matter. It's what's underneath us. So here, I'm going to dig in and pull up peat. Now I am feeling a lot of roots interconnected at the surface of the bog. My hand is completely wet, and then I'm able to pull up peat and some plant matter. I can wring it out. It's holding water like a sponge. And if you remember, when we were in the deciduous forest, we dug underneath our feet and found soil, plant material that was all the way decomposed, nutrient rich. Now, when we are digging in underneath our feet on the bog, we are pulling up peat. You can see that the plant material is still there. I can see all the structures of the plant material. Decomposition is not happening. Because decomposition is not happening, or at least full decomposition isn't happening, nutrients aren't being released back into this ecosystem. It is a very nutrient poor ecosystem. The plants you see all around you, those producers, all have special tools and traits or adaptations to survive on this bog. It is truly a harsh ecosystem to live on. So as we've discovered, this is a nutrient poor ecosystem. It is difficult for plants to grow, and not just any plant can grow on this ecosystem. The plants you've been observing all have adaptations to survive on this nutrient poor ecosystem. An adaptation is an inherited trait or tool that improves an organism's chance of survival. So these black spruce trees here have slowed their growth. The Labrador tea and leatherleaf are rhizomial and spread out across the surface. And some plants, needing access to necessary nutrients, have adapted different ways to access those nutrients. One of my favorite plants on the bog is the purple pitcher plant. It is a carnivorous plant that you can find in Minnesota. Here the pitcher plant is hidden in this hummocks of sphagnum moss and small bog cranberry, but we can get in and take a close look. The adaptations of the pitcher plant are numerous. They produce this pitcher, like a water pitcher, not a picture, that holds rain water. Then they have these small hairs growing downward. When an insect falls into the plant, it is trapped by those downward growing hairs and cannot escape. It sits in the water, and the plant digests the insect, absorbing necessary nutrients and surviving on the bog. Well, ecologists, on our adventure today, we've explored 3 different ecosystems, ending here at the unique raised bog ecosystem. Along the way, we've put our ecologist skills to work. We've observed abiotic and biotic factors. We have defined interactions between abiotic and biotic things and interactions between living things in an ecosystem. We've learned more about ecological succession and how ecosystems change over time and why they change over the landscape. Lastly, we've been looking closely at adaptations, traits that organisms have that help them survive in their ecosystem. Overall, we've used our science skills to get out in nature and explore. Thank you for coming with me on this virtual adventure ecology exploration. The skills we learned and practiced today can be used in any ecosystem. Practice observing, defining interactions, classifying abiotic and biotic factors in your yard, on a walk through the park, in your neighborhood, or in any natural setting. The Long Lake Conservation Center Bog Boardwalk is part of the Aiken County Trail System and open to the public for hiking. Our naturalist-led adventures like ecology exploration are for learners and groups that have reservations at Long Lake Conservation Center. We'd love to take you on an adventure in person. There's so much more to discover on the bog. Until then, if safe for you, get outdoors. Explore, conserve, learn about, and just take time to appreciate nature. Thanks for exploring with me. Bye.